Have you ever just felt lost? Like you're in a fog of doubt, or your mind is just so restless it can't settle on anything. Well, today we're going to dive deep into the very source of that confusion. We're going to explore what Buddhist philosophy calls Moha Mula Citta. These are the states of mind that are rooted in one thing, and one thing only: delusion.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll get to the bottom of what the real root of all unwholesome states is. Then we'll look at the two distinct ways delusion shows up. After that, we're going to dissect the anatomy of a clouded mind. And finally, we'll see why something like doubt can be so subtly dangerous. All right, let's jump right in. First up, we're talking about the primary unwholesome root, a concept known as moha. This is the foundation for everything else we'll discuss. So let me just pose a question. What do you think is the real ultimate source of our negative mental states? You might think it's greed or maybe anger. And yeah, those are definitely powerful. But the source material we're looking at says there's something even deeper, something that's hiding underneath it all. And that something is moha. You can translate it as delusion or ignorance. Its whole job is to darken the mind, to sort of throw a blanket over the true nature of whatever we're looking at. It's the reason we get things completely backward and make the wrong call. I love this analogy. It's such a powerful way to think about it. Imagine a thin film covering your eye. The world is still there, right? But you just can't see it clearly. Everything's blurry and distorted. That's exactly what moha does to our mind. And here's a perfect example of how that veil works. On the left, you see the illusion that moha creates. We see things as permanent, as pleasant, as having some solid self. But the reality that's being hidden from us is on the right. Things are actually impermanent, they're often a source of suffering, and they don't have a fixed, independent self. Delusion literally flips reality on its head.
So, here's the bottom line, and this is crucial. Moha isn't just another bad mood. It's the leader of the pack. It is the fundamental reason for all unwholesomeness. Because, think about it, if you can't see things as they really are, you're pretty much guaranteed to act in ways that aren't helpful.
Okay, moving on. Now that we have a feel for what moha is in general, let's look at the two specific types of consciousness that are born only from delusion. The source material points to these two key states. Now, the Pali names are a mouthful, for sure, but the meanings are what's important. The first one is a mind that's tangled up in skeptical doubt. The second is a mind that's scattered by restlessness. And you might notice they both start with upekha sahagata. That means they're accompanied by a neutral feeling, and there's a really interesting reason for that. But first, get this. Unlike states of mind rooted in greed or hatred, which can have multiple causes, these two have only one single root: moha. That's it. They are pure, undiluted delusion in action, which makes them really unique. So let's get back to that neutral feeling. Why isn't a doubtful or restless mind feeling happy or sad? Well, it's because the delusion is so thick that the mind can't get a proper grip on the object to have a strong feeling about it. It's kind of like trying to judge the taste of a gourmet meal when you have a really bad cold. Everything just tastes blah, muted. The source actually gives us three really specific reasons for this. First, the delusion itself acts like that thick fog we talked about. Second, the doubt makes the mind waver back and forth, so it can't land anywhere. And third, restlessness literally makes the mind shake so much it can't hold on to anything long enough to feel strongly about it. Another really fascinating thing they share is that these states are always unprompted. What that means is that doubt and restlessness aren't things that somebody else has to talk you into. They just bubble up on their own from our own internal confusion. Okay, let's go a level deeper. In this section, we are going to pop the hood and look at the exact mental ingredients, the components or factors that make up these two cloudy states of mind. Let's start with the doubt consciousness. As you can see, it's a cocktail of 15 mental factors. You've got 10 universal factors. Think of these as the basic mental building blocks like contact and feeling. Then you have 4 universal unwholesome factors that show up in any negative state. And then the special ingredient, skeptical doubt itself. But sometimes what's not in the recipe is just as telling. The mental factor of decision can't be there, because how can you decide when you're doubting? It's the opposite. Strong desire or willingness is also missing, because the mind is just too weak and wobbly. And rapture or joy? No way.
The feeling, as we know, is totally neutral. Now, let's switch over to the restless mind. It also has 15 factors. You still have those 4 unwholesome universals like lack of moral shame, but you'll notice the other ingredients are slightly different, and that totally changes the character of this mental state.
Now, unlike the doubtful mind, this one can have the factor of decision. But desire is still missing because a scattered mind doesn't have that focused commitment. And, of course, rapture is still out of the picture because the feeling is strictly neutral, not joyful. So we know what these states are and what they're made of. But so what? What do they actually do? Well, this final section is all about their impact, which is way more subtle and more serious than you might guess.
And this is where we get to the central paradox. These delusion-rooted states are actually considered weak when you compare them to the raw power of greed or hatred. But that weakness doesn't make them harmless. Nope. In fact, one of them carries a very unique hidden danger.
This lays out the difference perfectly. The restless mind is so scattered, so all over the place, that it's actually too weak to create any powerful long-term consequences or karma. But the mind of skeptical doubt, that is a whole different ballgame. It actively gets in our way and stops our progress.
The danger of doubt works in 2 main ways. First, if you're not really sure that wholesome actions like being kind or meditating actually matter, you're much more likely to just default to what's easy, to sensual pleasures. And second, and this is so important, even if you do perform a good action while you're filled with doubt, that action loses all its power. It's like planting a good seed in really poor, dry soil. It's just not going to grow into anything strong.
So the ultimate takeaway here is that delusion isn't just some abstract idea. It's like a subtle saboteur working in the background. It clouds our judgment, it weakens our best intentions, and it stops our positive actions from ever really taking root and bearing fruit. And that leaves us with a final question to really chew on. If these states of doubt and restlessness are just the default mode, bubbling up all on their own, then what in the world does it take to finally clear away those clouds and start to see things clearly?